All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1004, that's Mobile APIs and Frameworks, in the summer 2024 semester at Georgian. And it is week 5, part 1 of our broadcast and recording together. And this part, I want to talk about a little bit of some housekeeping. Again, starting off. So again, assignment 1 was done. It was marked. I think for the most part, what I saw, I'm very happy with most of you. You guys submitted assignment 1, and it's very good. In-class exercise 4, also very good, related to assignment 1. Some people are like, isn't it kind of the same? It's like part of assignment 2 is an in-class exercise 4, right? So it actually gives you a little bit more practice is what these things are. And so yeah, for the most part, assignment 1, well done. I think for most of you, some people forgot to submit their GitHub repositories. Some people forgot to give me access, those kind of things. That's where you might have lost marks, or some of you might have got 0. But it's really only worth 7.5% out of your final grade. So some people have elected not to do it even. There's some of those too. But anyways, assignment 2 is on the horizon. Next week on Sunday, not this Sunday, but next Sunday, is when assignment 2 is due. And it's basically, like we said before, it builds on assignment 1. And where assignment 1 gives you just read access and setting up your collection, assignment 2, like we talked about last week, what it does is it asks you to perform full CRUD on your collection. So actually you have to show that. And an example in your video, my expectation is that you would show your testing with Postman again, because we're not going to have a front end yet. All we're doing now is developing our API. It takes time for us to do that, so that's what we're doing. And then in the second half of the semester, we're going to go right into, okay, now that we've got our API, how do I connect to it with a mobile app? How do I connect to it with iOS and Android and all those kind of things? So that's coming. I'm just letting you know. And midterm test, that's also coming up. Let me just talk about a little bit of other things that are going on next week. So next week, I have a special event that I have to attend. So we will be fully asynchronous next week. This is the 1 week that we're going to do that this semester. I normally try to avoid it because I like to be synchronous and do it in the same day. So that means asynchronous means I probably will be creating the video ahead of time. It could be Wednesday, maybe even Tuesday. I will post the video that week. And then your job is to complete in-class exercise 6 and watch the videos and all that kind of stuff. I don't like it. I have to talk about that, but I have to do it, right? So I won't be available on the Thursday. So I won't be physically here at all, and I will not be physically online. I will be fully remote asynchronous. Okay, that's what's going to happen, which means sometime before, I will try and make it before. It might be after. I might do it on the Friday. I don't know, but you'll see the video that comes up that week, and then you'll still have an in-class exercise that'll be coming up on next week, as well as your assignment 2. So you have to plan accordingly. I will also talk about the midterm test today and a little bit next week during the video. Okay, so here's the midterm test information. It will be a take-home test, so it'll be, you don't have to come in because you guys are GC Flex, right? So I will publish the test. You'll have a window to get it done, right? Usually what I do is I give students the week. So let's say from Monday to Friday, that kind of stuff to get it done. I usually publish it on the Sunday. So for example, on Sunday, June 16th, I may release the test. I will send out an announcement on Blackboard, and I'll also publish that information on Discord. I'll say, hey, your test is available. And then you'll have the week to do it. So from Monday to Friday, let's say. And then as soon as you're done doing your test, you submit it. You have to have a video. There's no late on the test because it is a test. And the test will be something to do with full CRUD, and another data set. That's what it's going to be. So it's not going to be surprising. I think if you've done the in-class exercises and if you've done the assignments, the test is going to be no problem, right? If you've never done those things, then the test might be hard. At the end of the day. But that's what's going to be. And then it'll round out the first part of our semester, which is how to make an API. That's the first half, right? And then the second half, now we're going to connect to the API. We're going to start looking at, okay, how do I connect to my API now that I have it? I have, data. How do I read the data in an app? How do I display the data in an app? What kind of structures do I use for that kind of thing? And we're going to be doing that with iOS and Android. coming up in the second half of semester. So again, just to repeat, next week, fully remote, asynchronous, which means I'm not going to be appearing on Zoom. I won't have a Zoom call next week, and I won't be physically here in the building at Georgian, or even online. I'll be making the video for you, and your job is to watch the video. I know that it's not the best, but I need to do this because I have a special event that's going on next week, and I have to attend. Okay, so otherwise, and it's right in the same time slot, and I can't do anything about it. So if I can ask you guys to make sure you do that, I will also send out an announcement to remind everybody, because I don't want people randomly showing up to class and they're like, "Where's Tom?" Right? And I also don't want you to be on Zoom and then like, "Where's Tom?" Right? So it'll be fully asynchronous, and that's what it's going to be. Any questions from the people that I have online? A couple people, or concerns?
No.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. We're going to move on now to what we're doing today, right? So what are we doing today? We're going to be talking about authentication and authorization, a little bit of that. We'll also be talking about Passport and how to connect to MongoDB Atlas and create a user model. We'll be doing those things, creating a user controller, creating user routes. Okay, that's the stuff we're going to be doing. New endpoints for register, login, and logout. One thing that you will not be able to do this week is secure your API. You can't do it, right? And the reason why we're starting to do it, this is the first part of 2 weeks of authentication and authorization. Because if you look at our schedule, we have intro to authentication, and then we're securing our stuff next week with JWT. That's why next week is critical that you watch the video, because it'll be required for your assignment too. So you need to have login and logout operations and JWT and all that kind of stuff. We'll also talk a little bit about OAuth strategies, which means logging in with Facebook, or if anyone uses that anymore, or Google or Microsoft or any of those things. GitHub, you can log in with those things. There's a lot of things like that. Single sign-on is also something we can do, as well as two-factor authentication. We'll talk about all those things. It's a little bit about security next week as we round out our first half of semester. Okay. So again, that is what's going on. And so this week we're prepping for this. We're making our login and register routes. We're making our logout route. Logout is really used on the front end. The back end, as you'll see when we have JWT, JSON Web Tokens, which we're going to be talking about next week, is not really 100% necessary. And the reason why is because the logout process, once we create a token, as you're going to see next week, we're going to use token-based authentication, because we're passing a token to the back end as an example. And when that token is created, it doesn't expire. We have to expire it manually ourselves. And so there's going to be things we're going to be talking about, how to keep track of that token, where to store it, and all that kind of stuff. So that is our plan for today. Again, in-class exercise 5, due this Sunday at midnight. Assignment 2, it's on the docket. Please don't lose track of this. It's not that difficult. You're just building on assignment 1, and it's going to be due not this week, but next week. And that's the week before our midterm test. All right, so that's what's coming up. Again, look for more information about the midterm test next week, as I will be talking about it, because we're rolling into the midterm, in the following week, week 7. Then there'll be a short break. I got to talk about that too. There will be a short break where we don't meet. So the week of June 24th, so that's actually, let's see, that is the June 24th week. So 24th to the 29th, there's no classes, because that is reading week. July 1st, of course, is the July 1st weekend. And then we're right back on July 4th. July 4th. We're back on that day in class. Okay, so that's where I'm going to be, and that's kind of our structure. All right, so that is housekeeping, and that's what we're doing today, and let's get right to it. Let's talk about Passport a little bit. And actually, I'll start with the difference between authentication and authorization. So I got a couple of really keen guys here online today, so I'm going to ask you guys, what's the difference between authentication and authorization? What do you think the difference is? Anybody? Authentication and authorization.
Authorization is like asking permission
Okay.
or getting permission.
Kind of. What about Sudarshan? What do you think, Sudarshan?
Authentic authorization is like giving permission, and authenticating is like logging in,
Very good.
asking for the permission to logging in.
Right. So kind of. So here's what it is. So authentication is this is who I am. I am Tom. You're identifying yourself to the system. I'm Tom, or I'm Yash Kumar or Sudarshan. Right. That's authentication. Who I am. Right. And authorization is what am I allowed to do in the system when I'm in there? What's my role? Am I an admin? Am I a user? Am I a guest? What am I doing? Right. What can I do in the system? Authorization. So you have two levels typically like that, and you can have multiple levels of authorization, of course, where you might be an editor. I can edit some stuff. I can add stuff. I can't edit, but I can add. Those kind of things. I'm just a regular standard user where I can just look and see what the information is. I can get information from the system. That kind of thing. So that's levels of authorization. We won't be dealing much with that this semester, authorization. This is not a security course, right? But we need to talk about security a little bit because we need to secure our API. We don't want just anybody being able to access your data, which is what we're doing right now. So what the plan is today is to talk about Passport, which is how do we connect to MongoDB and start setting things up for sign in, sign out, registration, all that stuff, and some of the challenges around this, because there's some challenges around user registration and so on. Okay, so let's talk about that. So again, we talked about authentication. So really what we want to be able to do is think about how do I register a user, how do I sign in a user, and how do I check that, right? So Express doesn't have this feature built in, and neither does Mongoose. It doesn't have it. Mongoose just connects us to the back end with MongoDB, right? So we need to use something like Passport. So I want to take you to the Passport.js website. So let's go there. I gave you a link here, some important links that I put here up on Blackboard in this week's content area. But you can go to passportjs.org. And passportjs.org is interesting. It talks about how to authenticate with Node. Okay, that's what we have Node.js. We want to be able to authenticate. Who are you? And there's something called authentication strategies. Okay, strategies. So there's different ways of authentication. Let's look at some of them. So if I go like view strategies, you can see that I might have something like Passport Facebook, where I can log in through Facebook. That's a OAuth strategy. I might have Passport Twitter. Well, now X. I don't know if they're going to change that eventually, and so on. There's a lot of other strategies here that you can see that are listed. One common one is a local. If I put local strategy, Passport Local. And Passport Local is interesting because local strategy actually allows us to do username and password. That's what is very common. That's what the strategy is. You authenticate with username and password. Some institutions don't like this. And the reason for this is because usernames can be duplicated, or very close. Like for example, let's suppose I'm Tom123, and then you're Tom1234, and someone else is Tom123456. They're all different users, and they all look the same, as an example, except for the numbers, right? So that's no good. So a lot of times people are starting to use email addresses as your username. So you put your email address, that's your username. It's unique because it has to be verified, and so on. And I think that's something we have to think about as a strategy, like how to do that. We've got a little bit of code here as well, so that's something that the Passport site gives us, some code snippets to help us understand. So that's one thing. And we also get other things here. If you kind of scroll down, it talks about not just about the local strategy, how to log in, how to install it, testing and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty good in terms of just giving you a starting point, okay? But there's more information here, which we'll be doing. Let me just 1 second here. Okay, so that is kind of strategies. Other strategies, like, okay, let's go back. So we said these are strategies, passport local. And if I type in email, so here's the other one. If I said email, notice that there is not really an email strategy necessarily. OAuth, which is one we're going to talk about next week, even OAuth, there we go. OAuth is there, right? So there's Google OAuth 2, and OAuth means third-party authentication, where we're going to talk about this next week. I create a three-way trust scenario, right? Where I trust Google, Google trusts you, therefore I trust you, right? That three-way kind of trust association with thing. And trust is a very interesting field of study now. There's a lot of things about trust and trust systems, and if you actually read about it, it's very interesting. I find it's very, very interesting to think about trust. Like, for example, how do we trust technology? How do we trust other systems that we're using? And how do we trust each other? And it kind of relates to computer science in a big way. So yeah, so this is OAuth, and so different strategies. Again, we're going to be using local strategy on this one. All right, so that's the one thing. The other one to check, and I put the link here, is the passport documentation on the npm.js, which is your npm documentation. I think this is a good one too, because what it does is it kind of shows you some more code snippets, how to install Passport, and how it works, Passport use. So really it's kind of like a middleware function that gets inside the configuration. That's what we're going to be doing there. And how to authenticate a user and so on, okay, and verify their password. There's lots of really cool strategies here, which is something that we're going to be doing. There's also something we're going to be also doing is something called serializing and deserializing users. Serializing means we're going to encrypt and decrypt. So to help with this, I use a helper, right? So I use the helper one, npm module, which is passport local mongoose. Passport local, so there's passport local. Passport local gives us local strategy, right? That's what we're doing, passport local, right? And again, we get some information on how to configure our app.ts, our configuration for our app, and I'll go through this with you. And then, of course, there's passport local mongoose. Because we're using mongoose, we want help with authentication, serialization, and deserialization instead of us doing it manually with decrypt or bcrypt, as an example. So this helps us with that kind of stuff, and we'll talk about how to use the Passport Local Mongoose plugin to help us, create our structure. All right, so those are the 3 modules or 4 modules we're going to use, right? And I kind of put the links here if you want to read about them. I think it's a good read. So let's get right to it. What I want to start with is back to our application. I kind of talk about how to install. One thing I also talk about here, Passport Local. This should actually be Passport, not Passport Local twice. Passport Local Mongoose. I'm missing Passport here. That was weird. I don't know how I missed that. Passport, there we go. Because you have to use Passport too. Passport Local Mongoose, and then you add the dependencies. One thing is that Passport Local Mongoose, I think now, and even Passport Local has their own type definition libraries for TypeScript, and we'll talk about them. This has changed since I made these slides recently, actually. And I've got some code snippets here for how to configure our application. Again, I put them here for you for studying purposes, just in case you forgot, or you don't know where to look, or you don't know. You can look at my GitHub repository too. But this is an example of what the Passport configuration is going to look like for us when we add this to our TypeScript Express API. Okay. So on that, instead of reading this, because it's really boring, let's just do it. So I'm just going to go here, and we're going to pull up on my desktop. I'm just going to pull in Georgian, and then inside here I have you guys, MDEV1004. Also, one thing to note is we need to update the API afterwards too. This is kind of a two-step process for us, because the in-class exercise, which we're going to do here, so we're going to make in-class exercise 5, right? That's what we're doing. We're just going to copy in-class exercise 4 and create in-class exercise 5. It's going to take a moment to copy all the node modules. I could have deleted the node modules folder too to save some of the time, but I'm just doing it like a copy-paste operation here. which should be fairly straightforward. Okay, so that's what's happening there. We're just going to rename like normal, and just like you guys have been doing, again, most of you doing a great job. Continue what you're doing. I think your marks reflect this. If you look at your marks, all of them are online for people who have submitted on time. Some people who haven't submitted their marks, their assignment 1 on time, you need to wait till next week. I will have everything marked for you by, again, my plan is for Monday, so that way we keep up to date with everything. I like to be able to do that with you to give you good feedback, right? So here's in-class exercise 5, and now what I want to do is, of course, connect it to my Visual Studio Code. Let's get in there. And my friends, people that are online today, please stop me if you need a hand, if you don't understand something, or if I'm going too fast. Again, I want to make sure that you guys are taken care of. And for those people who can't join us regularly, I know that you guys have a very busy schedule and so on. It'd be nice to see some of you once in a while. All right, so here is this. Again, things that I'll change with in-class exercise 5 is just minor things. I want to change our, I'll start off with my server.ts where it says in-class exercise 4. I'm just going to rename this. And the other thing I want to do is package.json. I'm going to change that right now. And just move that, the version here to 004 to 005. There we go, save. And then once I've done that, and I'll save this one too, now we need to do the transpiling. So some people have this 005. There we go. Some people have this issue where it's not working because they haven't transpiled. Please remember to transpile. So the first thing I'm going to do here after I make my changes is transpile and test. Transpile and test, right, to make sure that things are okay, right? So again, I would do a TSC minus W. Again, there's other ways of doing this thing as well. You can use the build or watch task if you want to make one. I don't need to do this now, so I'm just going to use TSC minus W, which is going to transpile everything, and hopefully not having any problems. It's going to have 0 errors. That's what I'm looking for as we put everything in place. Okay, so that's what's happening. It's going to take a second. Give it a second, for it to do everything, and it should, transpile everything nicely. There it is. So 0, things there. I'm going to add another one in here, and the second terminal is where I'm going to use NodeMon. So here's NodeMon now, and NodeMon will hopefully connect to MongoDB Atlas for me, as well as, oh yeah, look, there's another NodeMon version. Doesn't matter. What we want is for NodeMon to connect to MongoDB Atlas right now, and then that's what we're looking for. Does it connect, right? So give it a second, and hopefully it will connect. There it is. And then afterwards, once that's connected, the next step is testing. So can we see our app? So again, I'll do localhost 3000/API. We should see some data, right? This is kind of the data type that you had. Last time I didn't add all of them. It doesn't matter. You guys added 20. Most of them were unique. Some of them weren't so unique, guys. And I kind of let it go. I kind of closed one eye when I saw some of your data. It's okay. Anyways, and then, you can use Pretty Print, which allows you to see what this looks like if you really want to. Also, some people, when they transferred over their data, for some reason or another, you didn't have genres correct or directors correct or one of those. Guys, the guys online here, I'm just going to turn my camera off because I'm lagging a little bit. So I'm just going to turn this one off. There we go. Hopefully that'll be a little better for performance. So yeah, so this is we know that it's working locally, and now it's a good time to put it up on GitHub. So that's the next part. So I'm going to go back to VS Code, and I'm going to open up another terminal, so the third one, and then I'm going to push it to GitHub. Let's try this out. So git add dot git commit -m. We'll say added project files for in-class exercise 5, and then we'll push that to GitHub. So git push. Okay, now some people have experienced some really weird issues where you push something to GitHub and it says, I can't push to GitHub. There's some files that you have on there that are weird or different. And the couple things you can do, you could do a push -- force. Don't recommend that. It's going to wipe out everything that's on GitHub. Or you can do a pull first, and then a push. And some people, if you have problems, please set up some time with me. I'll help you with this, but you need to figure out GitHub before your midterm test. All right, so that is Git. We've done it. We're ready to go with our changes for this week. And it starts with, if we look at our structure in our server, it starts with a model. So we have a movie model, right? The movie model basically describes the movie that we're going to be putting up on our database. I want to make a brand new collection, which is the user collection, because I'm going to have more than one user join us, hopefully. And the way we do this is going to create a brand new model called the user model. So we're going to make a new file. We're going to call this user.ts. Okay. And as soon as I make it, it creates all this other stuff. For the most part, if I look at the movie model, some things are going to be the same. For example, I do want this part to come with me. So I want to take that part, copy into user here. So that's the same, right? Because I'm still going to import from Mongoose, right? That's what I'm definitely going to do that. And the other thing that I want to take is some kind of interface. I definitely want to start thinking about that. Okay, so again, we want to start thinking about how this is going to work. So let's start building the interface for the user. So a user, if we think about an interface is like a struct for us. So we're going to just talk about that first. There's a couple things we can do here, right? So I want to do something like, so interface iUser, look, Copilot's like coding it for me. And I want to think about what I want to have in my user. Now here it's suggesting a username, password, email, and first name and last name and age. That's a lot of information. I don't need all that. For our model, we're going to keep it simple. We're going to have a username. I like that. The username is going to be of type string. We're also going to have a email address. I think this is important to have on file. Email address, which is also going to be of string type, right? And then maybe a display name, because the display name should be definitely a string, which is how we're going to display the name of the user in our app or on our website or wherever we're going to make it. I also want to keep track of a couple things. When the user was created with a date type, we want to use the date type for that. And also when the user was updated. If we change the profile for the user, I want to be able to kind of keep track of that if we're going to do profiles. Okay, so that's kind of a couple things there that we're going to do for iUser. So that's the I stands for interface. User is the interface for the user model, which is kind of like a little struct. It doesn't cost anything in TypeScript. What it does for us, it just creates a structure, just like the movie model. Movie, we kind of have an interface for iMovie, and then we can use that as well. And we're going to do some changes here in a second too. So iUser is the first part. Second part is we want to be able to create a schema based on our user. And just like we did for movie, notice movie, we said we want to make a new schema of type iMovie. That's kind of how we're going to do it for users. So we're going to say, all right, so we're going to have const. We're going to call this the user schema. Look, it's even typing it for me, the user schema, right? And what we want here is something that looks like this. But I want to talk about how we did it with movie. Movie, what we did was we used the short form declaration syntax. This is the short form syntax for declaring data types for a schema. Now the long form, we're going to talk about that with the user just to show this. For example, instead of doing it strictly like this, we can use curly braces. And what we can do with that instead is kind of talk about the type, right? Is it required? True, right? Is it unique? True. All those things are modifications to the username if we want this to be unique in the database. So for example, if, as an example, the username is not unique, then we'll get a warning or an error that tells us this. So this is kind of a long form type declaration for username and stuff like that. Same thing with our email address. We can say that, is the email address important? Should it be unique? Well, sometimes the email address can be shared maybe by a couple of different usernames. Maybe you want to log in twice. It depends on how strict you want to be for your model. So I'm not going to make this necessarily the same. So I'm going to say type as a string. We can accept this, but let's take away the uniqueness of the email address for now. Okay, so we don't have to do that. Once we put required as true, if you do not enter one of these two things, the registration will crap out, and so will the login. If you don't have information that's passed in, if this is not in the database, it won't work properly. Okay, next part is display name. So how the user will be displayed. And we can say that again, the type is a string, required is true. You need these are also required because we want to get a sense of how to display things. Created and updated. Created and updated is something different. We can definitely do types like this as well, but now in terms of making it required, we're not going to make it required. What we want to do is date.now. That's what we want to do for created, and as well as updated. So we start off with a date.now, right, by default, and date.now means we take the current date in milliseconds, or the current date. We can also structure this date if we want it differently, but for the most part, that is the first part of our user model, this user schema. The other thing we want to tell MongoDB is what the collection is going to be called, and you can specify the collection here as well. So we can say the collection is the users collection. Users, movies, users, right? So that is our schema. So far so good. I have an iUser, I pass the iUser interface here, and then I have a user schema, and I have this kind of stuff here. But we haven't included our Passport local mongoose or Passport or anything like that here. I think it's time to do that. So first we'll pause this creation. We're not quite done. We'll pause this creation, and then we'll go back to our module over here and add in those things that we want to add in. So just going to clear this, and I'm going to do the thing that we talked about in the PowerPoint, which is yarn add, right? We want to add in Passport, Passport local, Passport local mongoose. Okay, we want to add those three things. Okay, so Passport local mongoose, and then press enter, please. And then what this is going to do is it's going to go out to the internet, grab all those things, and install them in your node modules folder. So that's number one. Awesome. So we got all those three things. Let's inspect this for a second. Let's see what we got. Okay, so, and the reason why I want to see what we got, because if we have type definitions, so if you look in your node modules, and if I look at the things we have, so if I scroll down, and I want to look at Passport first, so I'm looking inside the node modules folder for this, just to show you how this works. In Passport, you can see that we have our package.json, right? And in lib, we have errors and an index.js, and this is all JavaScript stuff, right? So it doesn't seem like even HTTP and framework and errors, we don't really have any TypeScript files, at least not here. In the etc folder, again, there's no TypeScript files. So it means that we probably have to add a Passport type definition library. All right, so that's how do we do that. I'm just going to go here, and otherwise it won't be recognized, right? So we're going to clear this, and we're going to do yarn add at types / passport, and then -- dev, because it's a development dependency. On an interview, if I ask you what's the difference between a project dependency and a dev dependency, you should know the difference. Project dependency means that in package.json, we need that to run the project. A dev dependency is for you. We use TypeScript as a development dependency. We don't need to use TypeScript. We're using it because it helps us. So then it's a development dependency. If I press enter, it's going to download and install that module. And what that does is it gives us type definitions for Passport, which is very, very important, so we can understand how to use it. Okay, that's number one. Next, let's try out the other ones. So let's see about Passport local mongoose and Passport local. Do they have dependencies that we need as well? Let's take a look. So an index.js and a strategy, and again, looks like Passport local needs a type definition library. Okay, so if I'm wrong, it'll tell me, right? So we'll say yarn add at types. I'll just collapse this for a second. And then we can say at types / passport - local, and then -- dev, right? So it's a Passport local dependency. If it has the dependency built in, it'll say like, you don't need this thing, it's not required. Okay, so that's something we need to add in. We added it in, passport local. Wonderful. So now we have that dependency in there. Okay, let's go back. And now let's look at passport local mongoose. So again, going up here to our dependency. We're looking in our node modules, and I'm going to look in passport local mongoose. Oh, look at this. Passport local mongoose comes with its own index.d.ts. This, my friends, is a type definition library for TypeScript. Here it is. And so what this does is it attempts to define what passport local mongoose is for, for TypeScript. Okay. So let's kind of hover in there, and let's get out of here. Let's close this down. And now that we've included those things, now we can continue to build our user model, right? Because we have some information that maybe we didn't have before. All right, so let's do that. So up on the top here, we had a user, we had schema, we kind of included that too. And now we're going to import our passport local mongoose from passport local mongoose. We're going to do that. Passport local mongoose is our new module that we just downloaded and installed. And what we want to do here is, as we define stuff, the user schema itself can add stuff as a plugin, and plugins are like a middleware function. So I can say something like user schema, right? And we can say .plugin, and we can pass in passport local mongoose. So this is kind of like middleware that we plug in because we want to use passport local mongoose. And because again, passport local mongoose is another module that helps us with encryption and decryption of user data. That's what it does for us. Okay. Then, now that we've had this, then and only then can we start considering creating our model. So our model is going to be a new model. So we're going to say mongoose model, right? And of type, we're going to say iUser, right? iUser. Wow. Leave me alone. iUser. There we go. And then what we want is the name is going to be user, and we're going to use the user schema. But mongoose, notice mongoose. I want to use mongoose here. As an example, here's mongoose. Mongoose is here, right? You see mongoose. So we're kind of using mongoose here at the top. And so this is a different way of doing it. So we have collection, schema, model. There's our model, right? And what we want to do here is kind of use the mongoose model, right? That's what we want to kind of do. And the thing is, this might be a way of doing it, the model itself. We know we have the model class. We know we have one of these. So model is mongoose model. That's what that is, right? Because we can skip saying mongoose because we've included model here by itself. We kind of included that here, all right? So that's one thing. So model iUser, the model we're creating is called user. This is the name of the model that we are storing for mongoose and kind of in our database, right? And for the most part, this is the first thing we need to do. However, I also want to talk about declaring. We're also going to be talking about a user document that I want to declare. So one thing I can do is I can create a global. So declaring in TypeScript is interesting. I can declare a global variable that I want to make available to everywhere, right? And the global variable that I want to declare, right, is I'm going to export a type. And I want to use the type which is going to be the user document, right? So the user document, what I want to do is I want to make it equal to a document, right? That's what I want to make it do. And I want to also specify, if I put and, I could put iUser, but I don't want to use the entire iUser interface. Okay, so iUser interface includes all of this. I don't need all of, I don't need create it and update it. I want to be able to use this to vet my iUser, create it and update it, but I don't need all of it. Here, what I can do instead is I can skip to this and just say, I want certain things. I want ID to be part of that model, right? I want username to be part of that model, right? This little thing. username. I want email address, that's for sure, and display name. Those are the things I want, but I don't want all of it. So I took part of iUser and I've created a user document that's available. I've exported it here globally. So user document kind of becomes something that I can use anywhere in my app. You'll see why in a second. So this, my friends, is the user model that I've created, and I need this almost first before anything else, because it declares and defines my iUser, like interface, and so on. I could, and we haven't done this yet, but I could export, I could do this, I could export iUser. I could do that. Just like I could export on the model, I could export iMovie. I could do that, right? And what this allows me to do, if I go export, you know, as an example, iMovie, or export, you know, iUser, and those kind of things, it allows me to have another export, not just export default, which is movie, but also if I want to export, you know, that interface, so I can use it in other places. Yeah, let's see how that works. So I've kind of done this. I've kind of made my model. We haven't tested it yet, but I want to put it up on GitHub. So again, back to this. I'm just going to clear the screen, and I'm going to say git add dot git commit -m, and we'll say added user model, which is what we did. Added the user model, and then I'm going to push git push. Okay, so that's the first thing we did. Add the user model. Haven't tested it yet. That's number 2. We're going to do that next. All right, excellent. So now that we've got our user model, we can use this in our user controller when we make that and so on. For now, what I want to do is I want to go back to my config, right, in my app.ts and start configuring my project for use with authentication. So that's the next step that I'm going to use. And let's talk about this again a little bit, right, where I could split this off a little bit. One thing is that path, notice path here, we're not really using it, it's grayed out. See how this is grayed out? It says path is declared but never read. We can get rid of it. We don't need a module in here that's not going to be used. It just takes up more time, and we don't need it. More things like .env, we definitely want to use that. So we're going to just push this a little bit higher up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a little area here. We're going to say modules for authentication. That's what we're going to use. And we're going to use this stuff that we need, okay? So let's talk about some of these things. So one thing else also is if I was going to create sessions, you know, that's something that we need to do. In order for me to get this express session, we don't have that. That's something else we can also add. I have to add it into my project. Let's do that. So I kind of forgot to do that. Let's do this next. So session is interesting because we want to keep sessions on the server, right? Session-based authentication as well to support our tokens, right? So we're going to do that. We're going to say that yarn add, and we're going to say express-session, right? And we can also do, if I do this, express-session, it's going to add that into the package.json. There we go. And we also want to do yarn add at types express-session --dev because we want the type definition library for this one. Again, if we don't need it, then when we do this kind of thing, it'll tell us that it's already included, you don't need that. All right, so there. Now we have our express session. So just to go back just for a second to our package.json, you can see that our package.json has grown, so it kind of looks like this. And yours should look like this at this point now too. So we have express session. We just added that in. This is new, right? We also added in passport, passport local mongoose. And from a dev dependency perspective, we have express session. That's we add that. We just added that in, and we only have passport and passport local because we don't need passport local mongoose because it already is included a type definition file there. Awesome. So that is, we can just close that off now. And we don't need the server, we can close that off now, but I do need the app.ts because we're not finished there. Let's add in our import. So we can say import session from express session. We want to do that. I also want to import passport from passport. We didn't want to do that. And I also want to do passport local from passport local. We want to do that. Those are the 3 modules that we want to import. Notice they're all grayed out because we haven't used them yet. All right. And the next piece is defining our strategy. We want to use a you know, kind of a strategy That's username and password. So we're going to say define, storage or authentication strategy. Right, that's what we want to do. And so what we want to say is let strategy equal to password local strategy. So that's kind of like the the thing we want to do. What this does is it creates an alias, right? So we, instead of saying all the time password local dot strategy, we can just use strategy, which is just like the username and password way of doing things. The other thing we want to do is import our user model. So we can say import the user model. And for this, we want to definitely do something that looks like this. So where user is equal to models.user. Now, if you notice that they were getting an error here, it says user is declared, but its value is never read, and it says module has no default export, right? So that's something I forgot to do. Let's go back to a user model, and one thing we didn't do is do that. We did it for movie. We did this, right, where let movie, and we said export default movie. We didn't do this, and we said model. Let's go back to user and change it. So we said model instead of user, right? Oops, not this one, this one. We said model instead of user. Let's call this just user, like this. So that's in the user model. And then we have to do an export default user. Now this is where TypeScript is awesome, because it just told us we made a mistake, right? Otherwise we wouldn't have known. If I was doing this in JavaScript, it would have been like no complaints, no problem, whatever you want. And that's not what we want. We want our code to complain to us so we can fix it before we encounter the error. Okay, now we can see that user, if I hover over, is the user model. We can do that. Okay? And that is something that we've done so far. So we've kind of configured those things. We connect to Mongoose, so we can get rid of the space. We connect to Mongoose. We connect to it. We have a connection. We start defining our router, which is our index router right now. That's what we have here, our API index router, right? That's what we have right now. And for the most part, up till this point, we're pretty good. We have, and this is where we have our app use function. And here we have a lot of other things. So here's our index router here. And then we start defining our app. App is equal to express. We start doing our logger. We define express JSON as one of our middleware functions. So we can export, like actually pump out JSON. We want to encode our URLs, right? And we want to use cookie parser to parse cookies for ourselves. So before we do this part, which is defining our API, we want to start setting up our express sessions. So let's do that. So we're going to say set up express session, right? And then we're going to do this app use. Now this is kind of one way of doing it, where we say that the DB secret, well, we don't have a secret in database. We can add this in. The secret, we can make whatever we want. Okay, so one thing that we can do with our database, right, is we can put some secret in there for now. So I'm going to go into our database. That's in our db.ts file. We haven't done this yet. Notice we're only exporting. Export default is an object where we're kind of exporting our remote URI. This is another way to do export default, where we can create an object of things we kind of export. And so I want to have secret, right? Let's define that. So we'll say like, okay, so we have a secret, and the secret, now here's something. Should we put it here? What do you think, guys? See what it's suggesting? That maybe our app secret is something that we put inside of our .m file, right? And this is correct, right? We don't want to put a clear text secret here. So this is right. I want to do this. We don't have our process.m.app secret yet, but let's add that in to our .m file. So back to .m, we want to put app secret. So again, we'll kind of do this app secret, right? And we can put in whatever the value is. Let's say some kind of secret, some secret for now. We can make this better, because we can go out to some kind of 256-bit generate a random secret for our app if we really want to, by going on. Some websites actually provide this information for us. For now, this is okay. Okay, save. And now that our .env has app secret, then what we can do is we can go and use it here, so that we want to do it this way because we don't want our to display what the secret is to our GitHub community. All right, we don't want that. Okay, so secret then, right, is something that we want to export. So we can say something like, I want to export secret as secret, right? And again, we use remote URI, secret lowercase s. And if I save that and go back to my app.ts, we need to change this part to db.secret, and that will work now. Because it needs some kind of sessions. What it does is it uses a secret, and it says the secret is used to sign the session cookie. And this can be either a string for a single secret or an array of multiple secrets. If an array of secrets is provided, only the first element will be used to sign the session ID cookie, while all the elements will be considered when verifying the signature in requests. This is not bad. And it says best practices may include the use of environment variables to store the secret, which is what we're doing, periodic updates of the secret while ensuring the previous secret is in the array, and so on. Okay, so there's lots of things we can do. And what this does is it makes it so that our session is more secure. Save uninitialized, we said, okay, just gonna put this here over. If I say save uninitialized, it says, forces a session that is uninitialized to be saved to the store. A session is uninitialized when it is new but not modified. Choosing false is useful for implementing login sessions, reducing server storage usage, or complying with laws that require permission before setting a cookie. Choosing false will also help with race conditions where a client makes multiple parallel requests without a session. So that's what it says. And it says if you're using Express Session in conjunction with Passport.js, Passport will add an empty Passport object to the session for use after a user is authenticated, which will be treated as a modification to the session, causing it to be saved. This has been fixed in Passport.js 0.30. So this is kind of like a warning for us that that's what it was doing before. Resave, what does that do? So resave forces the session to be saved back to the session store even if the session was never modified during the request. Depending on your session store, this may be necessary, but it can also create race conditions where a client makes two parallel requests to your server, and changes made to the session in one request may get overwritten when the other request ends. So you can have multiple people log in. For example, if you log into your database with a mobile app as well as a website, you know, this can happen. So resave takes care of this. So this is our session. And we're setting it up because, again, we might log in with a website, not just a mobile app, okay? Then after we make our session, we want to initialize Passport, right? And the session. And the way this works is we're going to do app use. Anytime we use app use, we talked about this when we were talking about Express, we use the Passport as middleware, right? So we add Passport in there when we're configuring everything. And then what we want to do is we want to use the session as something that's part of our middleware as well. So anytime we use app use. So first we configure the session and then we use it as middleware, another function that we're going to do. And again, order matters here when we're kind of going through this structure. Okay, so that's how that happens. And then once we've done this, what we want to do is we want to implement an authentication strategy. And to implement an authentication strategy, right, we want to do something like Passport local, right? The create strategy is what we want to do. So we're going to say something like this. So Passport use, and then user.create strategy. Now here's something that happens right now, and it says that property used create strategy does not exist in type model iUser, and it's of type any. It doesn't like that, so you can cast this as any. I find that this sometimes fixes it, right? Create strategy. The other reason why is because, and this is an issue, I'm just going to go back here, because of our Passport local mongoose that has kind of some conflicts. So let me explain this for a second. So user create strategy, when I look at user itself, the user model, right, it's of type document, right? And what I'm basically saying is that it says that the error, right, it says that Passport create strategy, property create strategy does not exist in type model iUser, right? Model iUser, which is of type document, right? So I'm going to come back to this fix. So again, I can try and cast it as any, but that's not going to help right now. First part is what we're doing. The next part is after I make this, I want to serialize and deserialize the user info. I think this is important. And what we're going to do for that is we're going to say passport user, and then notice that we're getting this serialized user problem again. Again, what I would say is one way of normally fixing this is we can cast this as any, which a lot of times fixes the problem. A lot of times fixes the problem. Here, not fixing the problem anymore. And this is new because every time things get moved, sometimes this is a problem. We'll come back to this. So this is not helping. So we're not, casting is not helping this time around. We'll fix it. And again, if you kind of hover over user, it says serialized user does not exist on type model, blah, blah, blah. We'll look at that. We'll look this up. And by the way, quick fix, sometimes there's a quick fix, right? And it says fix using Copilot, explain using Copilot. If I try and fix using Copilot, it might say something like, hey, you know, the property, la, 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 and it might say something that I'm using, you know, kind of Copilot to help me. Copilot isn't that great when it comes to this. To solve the problem, it says, look at this, look what it says. To solve the problem, I would import the passport local mongoose package and use it to add the serialized user method to the user model, right? So that's what it says, right? So it says, okay, so that's what the thing is. If I click accept as this, right? It gives me this, where it says user plugin. That's what it wants me to do, right? And it wants me to plug in passport local mongoose, which we did. We already did this part in the you know, kind of what we did already. So don't worry about that. That's what it's asking us to do. I'm just going to undo those changes because that is not what we want. I'm going to come back and fix that in a second. The user model has to be fixed. That's the problem right now. Next, we want to deserialize our user. And again, I love that you know, we're getting these issues, because then, you know, it's going to force us to try and fix these issues, which is something that we want to do. Let's see if we can find a solution. Maybe we can't, and that's okay, because remember that it'll compile anyway, even if we're getting these issues. All it's saying is that property serialized user does not exist, and I'm going to see why we're getting that issue. And give me a second, and sometimes this happens, guys. I have to report to you, okay, that every semester that I do this course, as an example, and every time I'm using you know, I use anything like this, like web technologies, we get some funky stuff happening. Okay, really, we get some funky stuff happening. And some of the funky stuff that we get is something's changed, right? Something changes here in our user model, as an example, that causes us to have an issue, right? So I'm just going to give you 1 second. I'm just going to just find that solution. One sec. And I'm just going to look at the user model again, because sometimes we can just find the problem in our user model. I'm just going to go to my user model here for a second and take a look. So what it's really saying is, you know, that the user model, when we plug in the user schema, this thing, we plug in passport local mongoose, it didn't quite do what we wanted it to do. So sometimes the fix is something like, I'm just going to check, I have another piece of code that I used. And 1 second, because I encountered the exact same thing before, recently. And of course, whenever we have that, there's always a new fix for this stuff. Let's see what I got here. Okay, la 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 la. I did all that stuff correctly. Okay, okay. So the fix for this might be, here we go. So iUser, and what we can do is on top of that, we can say that I want to cast the user also as a passport local document. All right, so if I combine these two things together, iUser and passport local document, now the user is of type iUser and passport local document, which might help with what I'm doing. Okay, that's one thing I think that might help me. Okay, let's see if that works. So I'm going to say, now user schema is giving me an error. It says no overload matches this call for user schema. And I think that I'm just going to make sure that I'm not, oh yeah. And what we can do is, this is what we can do here. At the top where it says iUser, we can say that iUser extends passport local document. And what this will allow me to do, passport local document is something we're going to have to import as well. It will help me fix this problem because we're defining user as not just a regular user, but something that uses passport local. So let's save that, go back to my app.ts, and let's see if it takes care of that issue. So that's the first part. And let's see if, again, I have an example that I'm looking at right now that I've used. I just want to make sure that I'm not totally off base. Again, every semester, believe it or not, I have some changes to this that causes me some level of interesting combinations. So, we get that from user. I'm just looking at my code here. I'm getting my references. And right. So let's see what it says now. So save. And let's see what it says now. It says that property create strategy does not exist in type model user. Okay, so it does detect it. And let's see if as any will help me out. I don't think so. It used to. It used to. Believe it or not. As any casts these things as any type, right? As opposed to, so it casts this whole thing as any, right? I wonder if I have to put this as in brackets. I doubt it. If I did one of these and I said that you want to cast all this, because all of this is going to come back to this. It's just that it's not that problem. It just doesn't recognize create strategy as something that's there. Let me just kind of fix that. What else did I do? I think also what I could do is passport local document. It's just all back to that passport local stuff where it doesn't know what create strategy is. So that is definitely an issue. One second, guys. Let's try this again. So much work, right? That's what I'm saying to you. It's we're going to fix this problem. We'll grab this error here. What happens, my friends? What happens? By the way, if you find a fix, don't need to do that. So I'm just looking at a fix here, if possible. Casting. That's kind of what I did. I don't think there's anything that I don't think anything wrong. Passport local model. So I'm looking at some documentation here, guys. Passport local mongoose. Tricky. Use that as iUser. I mean, it's going to work. Even if I transpile, by the way, I have to also talk about this. Even if I transpile what I have and I have these errors, it will still work, right? Because remember, at the end of the day, it's going to create JavaScript at the back end. But my concern is that I'm getting these funky errors, and I don't want those errors with you guys, right? So I may figure this out on the break. I may kind of go away, and on the break, I'll figure this out. This worked for me before, but maybe it's not working now. I can also check one terrible thing to do, really terrible thing to do, is under passport local mongoose, we can also inspect the type definition file. And the type definition file lists the user. So we can see, you know, how the passport looks. So here it is. So here's this. This is the problem. So I see how it extends model. And it also has a problem because it's clashing. Passport local mongoose is clashing with our, you know, the definitions that we get, the newer definitions that we got from passport local and passport itself, right? There's newer definitions than this one, and it clashes. So that's what passport local model does. So I'm going to see something here with interface. So I'm actually looking at the type definitions that they supplied. Model. There's a schema. See how there's all these errors. Namespace mongoose has no exported member schema, which is incorrect actually. So model, and then there's a name. Model includes this. Functions. Hash fields, secret fields, passport local options. There's options. So register, find user by name, create strategy is what we did. Okay, so here it is. So user is of type T. See this? Where user is of type T, and serialized user, deserialized user has a username. So if these are things that we're looking for: deserialized user, serialized user. So if I was to say that instead of type T, we said that it's type any. Let's see what that does to our model, right? So if I kind of save this, and if I go back to here, does that take care of our app.ts a little bit? So serialized user does not exist on model. That's what the problem is. It's actually not a typing issue. Go back to that. Let's undo that. It does not exist in type model. Because the model is here in the user model. Let's make sure. Let's do another way. Let's get rid of collection. We aren't using that. And let's also use mongoose. We'll import mongoose. And what we'll do is we'll say that, what if we do it the other way around? Again, I'm talking to myself, guys. Bear with me as I do it, but I'm trying to figure out the problem. And that's how it works. Every semester, my friends. There's always something like this. And I'm, again, not totally worried, but wouldn't mind giving you the perfect way of doing things as opposed to thinking about how it could be done differently. Passport local mongoose is this. Just going through this one. Passport local document is good. Got the user model here. Username, user schema there. Schema is of type new schema. And that gives me this. That's correct. And then let's use, just curious, if I was to use mongoose model, that now works. Const user, right? Mongoose model, we declared it global. Oh, maybe we can make this a mongoose document. Well, it's the same thing. Mongoose document or document, same thing. User schema. See if that works. Passport local document. And it doesn't like that. Why? Because overlaps with the other. So we'd have to take this away from here, and that would not overlap, or does it overlap? Oh no, because we are already doing this. We are already doing that. Because we're doing it up here. We're extending passport local document. That's what iUser does. And then we're using it here. Huh. That is new. Well, I think I'm gonna ignore the error for now, and then we'll come back and then create strategy does not exist on this model. Passport local document does not exist on this document. Create strategy. Because we're saying it's of type iUser. One more thing. Let's see what if instead of, so this is passport local document, because we're passport local mongoose gives us passport local document from mongoose. That's what it does. This is where this comes from. Passport local document. And then we extend stuff. Just curious, if I press Control Space, yeah, we're gonna have to, I'm gonna come back to you. I'm gonna figure this out because again, it's just a minor error. It will work. It just, what it's doing is it's trying to figure out what the type is, because it's just basically saying, so the complaint is, I don't know what you're talking about, Tom, because passport, it tells me, it says passport local document, it needs this, right, as an example, and it says it's, and passport local document and required, it says any, but I'm giving it any. So this is, it says property create strategy does not exist in type model, and that is an issue, right? So it's quick fix that Copilot is telling me about is it does not exist in type model, and it says the error message you're seeing, create strategy method, is not found in the user model. This method is provided by passport local mongoose, which adds some functionality, and it gives me a suggestion. Now, unfortunately, I have to tell you that this is wrong. See, even when we're using generative AI, and that's why I said to you guys, sometimes generative AI is wrong, right? Sometimes it's not wrong. But here, iUser extends mongoose, and it says mongoose. It's suggesting using a mongoose document. Yeah, let me pull this open so you can see it. So instead of us extending passport local document, it just says use document by itself. Maybe this will solve our problem. All right, so let's try this out. So this is its suggestion. That means that what it's saying, instead of using document, passport local document, what if we just said mongoose document? What if that, does that fix our problem, right? And we can save this, but then it causes other issues down here where user schema, it doesn't like that, because now it says no overload matches this call, because passport local document is something that we're trying to use. And of course, now we don't need that anymore because we are avoiding that problem. So that's one thing we've done. So mongoose document, we're moving back to the mongoose document, not the passport local document. Let's see if that is better. And then if I go back to here, does it help me? That's the question. Does this help me? And now it says property create strategies not exist on model user. Just doesn't exist again. The same thing. So it really didn't fix the problem. Right? There's the problem. And that is what it's doing. It says we can say quick fix, explain, back to Copilot, and then what it's going to do is it's going to try and do the same thing. It's going to say, well, you know, this is what's happening, and this is why your experience is error. So it's going to try and do that again. The error message you're getting is this and this. And what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to take a short break because I kind of made the things that we want to do, and then I'm just going to explore this a little bit more and see if I can find a recent fix, because these are fixes that, again, one thing to know about generative AI is it's old. Even if it's old, like 6 months old, just like my knowledge, 6 months, may not be good enough. And I'm going to have to look this up and see if I can find a fix. And you might find a fix that's faster than me, right? So
Professor, I'm getting only error in one line.
Which one?
Password serialize user, user serialize user. Only that line.
Isn't
So
that awesome?
I imported using types of password local mongoose using yarn. So that fixed me for 2 lines. I'm not getting error in line number 54
so sorry,
and 50.
What did you do? What did you do, for example? You imported
I
what?
imported types password local mongoose to my dev dependency.
Can you put that in the, show me in your in the chat, please, and then I'll use that. I'll try that. I will try it.
Okay, Professor.
So I'll try anything at this point. I don't want to get rid of the error.
So for me,
Yeah, just type it in the chat and then I'll do it.
okay, Professor.
Because that means that's simple. That's just a casting issue like I had before.
So I'm from another.
So you're saying add yarn
And
add
I've
types.
added all of 3's dependency, like passport local, and passport local mongoose.
Yeah, but the problem with this is it says that it has a type definition field. Let's see if it does this. I hope you're right. If this is all this is, then that's great, because then it'll override the type definition library that's built into Passport Local Mongoose that comes with it. This is what you did, right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. If that's all it is, wonderful. Yeah, see what it says here? See, it says like at types Passport Local Mongoose. It says mongoose. It says warning, has unmet peer dependency, this, right? And I'm okay with that. That's just a peer dependency that's unmet. Token provider. All right, let's see if it gives me that error now. I still get that error. Oh, I see what you did. Okay, and then as any, would that clear that up? Or is that just still not a problem? Because that's how I cleared it up last time. Yeah, there it is. Now nothing. Thank you for that. You're awesome.
Thank you, Professor.
Yeah, so if we put as any in there, once we've got that type definition there, I think we're good to go. Wonderful.
Okay, Professor.
It sounded funny because that is weird. Okay, it's fine. Because, okay, I'll accept it. Again, it's just type definitions anyway, but I like to know why, because we already have that type definition in here. I guess that's the new thing. So there you go. Thank you. All right, so now that we've done that, we have everything we need. Let's put this up on GitHub because we've defined our configuration. So I'm just going to go here and do it. So let's go here and git add dot, git commit minus M. We'll say added kind of authentication config, which is what we did, and then git push. So we kind of added our user model, we added our authentication configuration, and when we come back from break, let's take 10. So we'll come back at 12:30, and when we take 10, after that, when we come back, we'll do the next piece, which is I want to do log in, register, and log out, and that'll be the next part of what we're doing today. I'll stop recording now.